Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Horns Report here on KXAN Plus. I'm your host, Billy Gates, and with me today is just going to be the two of us today, KXAN Sports Director Roger Wallace. And Roger, let's get into it. Coming off of a bye week, theoretically, Texas is going to be healthy. Should be getting a lot of key players back. Talking with Steve Sarkisian at Monday's press conference, he kind of deferred to the upcoming injury report done through the SEC now that we're in conference play. But it sounded like Trey Wisner was going to be able to go.
Yeah, he kind of hinted to that last week when he did the Monday presser after the Sam Houston game that he was trending. And that also tells us that had Sam Houston been a different game, maybe he could have gone, maybe not. But with the extra 2 weeks now it will be, it sounds like, again, that would be a big return. Hasn't played since the Ohio State game. Ran for over 80 yards in that Ohio State game. Not sure about C.J. Baxter. Not sure about Emmett Mosley on the offensive line. Not sure about Cole Hudson. So it does look like they'll get some back for this October to remember, starting in Gainesville on Saturday against a Florida team that kind of makes you scratch your head, doesn't it, a little bit, Billy? Because we know they're talented, but the results haven't been there.
Yeah, and coming into the year, kind of like what we're going to talk about later in this program about expectations. Florida had all these expectations. Like everybody was like, oh, this is going to be Billy Napier's bounce back year. DJ Lagway, their quarterback's a year older and a year wiser, theoretically. But hasn't really panned out for the Gators. Lagway throws 5 interceptions in a game. He's thrown more picks than touchdowns this season. So the Gators are kind of tough to get a read. I mean, from what you've seen, Roger. I mean, I don't know. Like it is confusing. Like, can you kind of get a read on them? Like I don't even know.
Well, it's kind of like the converse of Texas because they rolled over LIU. In the opener, and then they played 3 tough games. Now, South Florida, good, maybe not as good as we thought when they got thumped at Miami, but they lost to a really good LSU team. He threw the 5 picks, and still LSU only scores 20. So that tells you a little bit about the Florida defense. It was 13-7 late in the ball game against Miami at Miami, and then Miami gets a couple of scores. So all those things from the results point of view say, yeah, Florida's struggling, especially on offense, but they just played a tougher schedule so far. Texas hung in there with Ohio State. Now we saw what Ohio State did in Seattle, so they might be even better than we thought, even though they were number 1, but hadn't been tested since the Texas game. So it's kind of like, all right, let's see what's up on Saturday from both perspectives. Has it just been really good competition for Florida, and they're better than 1-3, and for Texas? Mm-hmm. Are they better than maybe 3-1 because all they did was get criticized in the 3-1 when there was any discussion about Texas? Right. It was never really anything positive said about them, and we didn't expect that with the 3 home games. But the negative was the UTEP game, and then I joke, and then the Sam game, the arch reaction to his touchdown. That was kind of a sidebar negative. So it's kind of like, all right, here we go. Let's see what's going to happen. I think we thought this is where we'd be when they left Columbus.
Yeah, and interesting to go back and just look at the rankings, look at the preseason rankings, because that's fun, right? We're a month and a half into the season. Let's go back and have a look at where we started. Well, obviously, Roger, the Longhorns started number 1. They're not number 1 anymore in the rankings.
No, but they're a drive away from maybe being number 1 if they beat Ohio State. Again, had the ball, down 7. Yeah. Couldn't convert a 4th down. If they do, maybe they go in and score, maybe they don't. So yeah, that game was the whole perception of Texas right now, other than the struggles against UTEP. So
exactly.
That's why I think this Saturday and moving forward we'll kind of figure things out.
Yeah. What's more interesting to me anyway is that Florida is here down at 15 to start the season. Let me make this bigger for you so you can actually see it. Let me scroll down here. See preseason poll, everybody was thinking Florida, they're going to be one of the teams to be reckoned with in the SEC. They're at 15, and it's crazy how these things kind of change in such a little amount of time, theoretically. So I guess we're just gonna have to see when the teams get into Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, known as the Swamp, if you're into nicknames. But it's going to be quite a matchup between two quarterbacks who aren't really all that experienced, both sophomore in standing anyway. This is their first years starting with Lagway and Manning, and we've talked about the issues with Lagway. So interesting matchup.
Yeah, remember he was actually playing well last year and then got hurt before the Texas game.
Right.
And he is from Willis, a guy that Sark recruited. And so, that'll be a little bit extra on his plate. I'm sure he's plenty motivated the way things have gone.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be a team from Texas coming in to motivate him, but that's just, kind of a sidebar story as well. And for Arch Manning, he talked about that he felt good about the bye coming at the right time. Work on some things and maybe get fresh to your point, the injuries and Texas looking to get healthier. But I think this is going to be a very interesting game because of what's going to happen afterwards and what's going to be said around this Texas program. And I don't anticipate Texas running away and hiding.
Right.
But if that did happen, then all of a sudden the heat is really on Billy Napier.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple bites from Sarkisian from his Monday press conference. I'll play this first one. He's just talking about playing at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium at the Swamp, how it's historically pretty rough place to play. So here's Coach Sarkisian.
Obviously, a very difficult place to play. A place that has been known around the country as one of the more difficult places to play. They've been playing great defensive football all year. And they've got explosive playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. And, they've just been off the mark a little bit offensively, but it's not for lack of players and it's not for lack of scheme. Billy's a great coach. He's going to scheme us up. So we've got to be prepared to go, and we got to be great on special teams. They've got an elite kicker. They've got an elite punt returner in Brown. And so this is going to take all three phases, playing at a high level. And that starts at the line of scrimmage with the offensive and defensive lines. And then our speed guys need to play fast. And so we've got our work cut out for us that way, but definitely looking forward to the opportunity and looking forward to kicking off SEC play.
You gotta love a coach who shouts out the special teams guys that they're going up against.
Well, I'm sure watching the NFL yesterday scared every coach at every level, the way even at the highest level it played such an important fact. But yeah, for sure, that's always a concern, especially on the road.
Yeah. And so speaking of the road, we had touched on it earlier. Quintrayvon Wisner maybe coming back. Don't know. CJ Baxter maybe coming back. We'll know more about that when the first SEC player availability report comes out, where they come out Wednesdays, right?
Yeah, I've got a prediction. Yeah. Questionable.
Right.
Maybe probable by Thursday or Friday or Saturday at about 12:30.
Yeah, you're right. Or maybe it'll be game time decision. Those are my favorite ones.
Yeah.
Like when they do it, an hour and a half before kick or whatever, and their game time decision. It's like, okay, well, that's
based on what he said last Monday, I expect, unless Wisner's had a setback, I would expect him to play.
Right. Yep, that is the expectation, because he talked about it, pretty much the entire time they were injured, right? I mean, especially when CJ goes down with a hamstring injury, he was thinking, well, maybe he could have played, but we'd rather hold him out to get him ready for SEC play, which, as we've been talking about, is coming up.
It'll be interesting to see if he takes 5 running backs. He talked about he gets 74. He goes, if we put you on the plane, you better be ready to play. So, it'd be interesting to see how many running backs he takes with him. Yeah,
and it's one of those things where all 5 of them have proved they can play.
Yeah, my guess is he will.
Sure, yeah. All righty. Well, there is another kind of interesting thing. I actually wrote a story on KXAN.com that kind of based around this idea. Sarkisian as he said it, went up on his soapbox a little bit during the press conference today, being Monday, talking about how, not necessarily just Arch Manning, but that's the kind of the prime example, but how these players have been trying to deal with just as astronomical expectations when it comes to being talked about various forms of media, whether it's traditional stuff, kind of like what you and I do, Roger, or if it's, in the sort of like the blog sphere, sort of social media, Instagram, TikTok, that sort of thing. Where
what we're doing now,
kind of what we're doing now, right? But those folks that may not be as seasoned or as trained in reporting as you and I, just kind of opinion havers, I guess. I know Charles Barkley put it great when one of the Inside the NBAs that they were doing. He said that social media has given people opinions that don't deserve one.
Yeah, and I guess the flip side is don't listen, don't watch.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what Steve was talking about during the press conference was how he and the coaching staff approach this with their guys, and how they don't necessarily shelter them in Steve's words, but they try to protect them from things like that. So I'm going to play this bite from Steve. It's about 1:20, so you're going to be here a little bit, but I think it's pretty interesting, and we'll discuss it after we have a listen. So here's Coach Sarkisian.
One thing that came out of this weekend as well, and I'm looking around the country at the high-profile players. I don't know if any of them are living up to what everybody said they were supposed to be. But we're in this era right now of everybody's got a phone, so everybody's got Twitter. There's 9,000 podcasts going on. The coverage over college football is more and more intense than it's ever been. And so players are getting put up on these pedestals really quickly in their careers. And I felt like this weekend I could feel some guys pressing, not so different maybe than Arch was pressing early on, to where they feel like they have to live up to, whether it's whatever they're allegedly making through NIL, or because this is what the media is saying I'm supposed to be or I'm not being. College football players are getting critiqued and criticized more now than they ever have in the past too. And so this is a different era that we're in. And I think that we've got to do a great job as coaches of, I don't want to say shelter, but we got to protect our guys, and because they're not pros yet. All right, and the majority of them probably will be, of the guys that I'm talking about. But we've got to do a really good job of putting them in the right mental space to where they're still enjoying playing the game of football with their college football teammates.
I thought that last part was interesting. That's kind of like the argument with like the true form of amateurism, right? Playing for the love of the game, playing because you want to be with your buddies, like that sort of thing. It was just a kind of an interesting little tangent for him to go on, but I mean, tough to really argue with any of that.
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of different ways to look at this. First of all, the people that made Arch Manning a Heisman Trophy favorite, or the projected #1 pick in the draft in, say, 10 months from when these came out in the summer, I think that's absurd, because I don't know what they're basing it off of, other than when he came in against UTSA, ULM, and Mississippi State. Now, if they watched every one of those plays and broke them down and thought from 90 passes that he threw, they knew enough to make him a Heisman favorite, then good for them. But if they did it because his last name is Manning, he plays for a Texas team that's going to be ranked #1, #2, #3, #4, then that's silly, and that really exposes them to me more than it exposes Arch. And again, Arch didn't do this. Now, the flip side, Billy, is Sark says they're not pros. Well, they kind of are pros, and here's what I mean by that. You're watching a Texas game, or, for instance, this weekend watching games, and go to commercial break, Arch and Cooper Manning doing a Warby Parker commercial, or Arch and Cooper and the head of Canes doing a Canes commercial. So they kind of put themselves in a position to be more of a target, because we see them acting like pros. What do pros do? They hawk products, they're on commercials and things like that. So to me, it's two different things. The putting them on a pedestal, I think, is, I don't want to use the word irresponsible. I'm not going to go that far, but that just shows either you don't have enough knowledge,
right,
or you think you know more based on information you don't have, or you're just doing it because he's a Manning. And so I think Sark knows all that, but he wants to say what he says because it's got to be frustrating as well.
Oh yeah, and he also mentioned in the same breath as Arch there. In some of his comments, Ryan Wingo, same kind of deal. I mean, you come in with all these expectations.
Yeah, that's
all
more
this
internal.
Talent. That is a little internal.
That's a closer expectation.
Sure. Yeah,
the Arch thing to me, it's totally opposite, Billy.
Right.
To me, the Arch thing is the expectations came out and moved in, and in.
Sure.
I'm sure it was a little bit different because. Yeah. They watched Texas every game, and they knew Arch only threw 90 passes.
You're right.
Ryan Wingo, they knew what he came in as. They saw flashes. And so the national media, Ryan Wingo wasn't on their radar.
Right.
They're not thinking about Ryan Wingo. They don't. Half of them don't know who he is.
Sure.
So it's kind of two different things with two different players.
Yeah. Crazy. It's crazy out there in the internet.
But and again, the coaches don't control NIL,
right?
And they don't control the rules and the changes and all that. But they have to deal with the residuals, and the residuals are people are going to treat them more like pros because they hear, whether it's accurate or not, that they're making millions of dollars, and now schools are paying them. We know that for sure.
Yeah.
So they have to put a dollar value on some. Now, maybe Texas doesn't have to pay Arch very much because he gets all the outside income. But it still all sounds like what? It sounds like pro sports to me.
Right. Yeah. Like everyone's got their base salary or whatever and their endorsements. That is kind of like pro sports. But it is like how do you like balance that? Like I guess that's the job of a head coach, right? I mean that's kind of what more or less what Sarkisian eventually ended up saying is that it's his job, that it's the coaching staff's job to really balance all of that, to create a culture where the money side and the on-field product are supposed to live separately. So it's kind of tough to be a Division I football coach these days. When we get to basketball, a Division I men's basketball coach, like all that, just being a Division I coach in general is getting to be tougher and tougher as we kind of move along with this NIL stuff.
Isn't it kind of the same though as a professional coach? You hope they're still playing for the love of the game, not necessarily just the love of the paycheck. But then again, we're all realistic in the fact that the paycheck is what and there's some people that play for the paycheck because they want to set up their family. They want generational money. My big concern, and I say this, it's not my concern because I don't have to deal with it.
Sure.
Players that are getting paid, maybe it's just, and I say just, a few $100,000. They're not going to the NFL, and all of a sudden they go to a job market where they're making a fraction of that. Okay. And maybe they've had 2 or 3 years of that kind of money and being able to help out their family, and then their family or extended family starts expecting it. And to me, that's where the crash comes, is when you don't get to the next level, and all of a sudden, what other profession do you make all this money in a very, very short term, and then you have to turn around and make a living for 25 or 30 years at a much different rate? So it's all great for the players to get theirs, but I'm sure that's one of the unintended consequences for people, family, friends that do have the best interests of these student athletes in mind. Boy, they're going to talk about coming down off your cloud in a hurry when you're not getting that paycheck. Yeah, no,
I didn't really think of that, to be honest with you. That's a good point. That is a good point. So, I mean, and as we sort of, get further into this, there's going to be more legislation with NIL. There's going to be more guardrails put in. So maybe there's some sort of mitigating factor that comes about through that. But then again, I mean, who knows at this point? Everything is fluid, and the only thing that stays the same as change, right?
Yeah, and my guess, one of the pitches for a coach, to combat what I'm talking about is, all right, you got a little taste of this.
Sure.
You're not going to get that in the next level unless you earn it on the field, on the court, wherever. So that, maybe the taste is incentive as well to pour everything you can, to quote the new catchphrase, into their craft, so that they can go to the next level and get a couple of professional contracts.
Yeah, it's a topic we could spend hours on, but we're not going to. We'll leave that there for now. I kind of want to move along to to what happened during Texas's bye week this past week in the college football landscape. 4 top 10 teams go down in just a chaotic week. I know that there were a lot of ranked matchups happening, but you get a team like Ole Miss who shoots up 9 spots to number 4 after their big win. Georgia falls 7 spots. LSU falls 9. Alabama goes up 7. Like your Indiana Hoosiers, Roger, they rise 3. They get into the top 10. They've got a tough matchup with Oregon this week, or next week, excuse me. Yeah, next week. Had to check my dates there, but man, like, and obviously, like we've always said, like, the rankings don't really matter until the CFP committee puts theirs out, but just to see this kind of shuffle in the rankings this kind of early in the season, that's a pretty wild time.
Yeah, and the first one that sticks out to me is Alabama, because they did it on the road, and I guess Kalen DeBoer can coach again. Because he was left for dead against Florida State, and now he goes and he beats Georgia, snaps their 33-game home win streak in Athens. So that team looked really good. Ty Simpson looked really good. The other ones were road losses. Florida State went into a snake pit in Charlottesville against a pretty good Virginia team.
Yeah, that was what I didn't scroll down the list far enough to get to Florida State on here.
Yeah, that's right. And then LSU's got people scratching their heads. But we know Ole Miss is pretty good. But again, this goes back to me, the cannibalization of
Sure.
what we're ahead of in the SEC.
Yeah.
And who's going to be the least cannibalized and be able to survive. And yes, the rankings don't matter, and you can absorb a loss. But as I said after the Ohio State game for Texas, okay, now you have one of those losses, so you can't afford to absorb many more. And to me, that's the case with the Georgia team. Now, their brand right now probably even stronger than Texas. So I could see a 3-loss Georgia team, depending on what their 9 or 10 wins looks like, still having a chance at the playoff and losing to a good Alabama team. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what this all looks like. And I'll just throw this out: November 1st, when Texas goes back to DKR to play Vanderbilt. What does the landscape look like in 4 games for a lot of programs? Right,
yeah. Vanderbilt right now 5-0, number 16 in the country. They've looked pretty good with Diego Pavia in his 6th year playing sports. I don't know. Like he petitioned to get one more, got it, and Vanderbilt's making the most of it because they're looking pretty good at this point. Like you say Georgia, they're going to bounce back. Alabama.
They get Vandy now.
They're Alabama, and they get Vandy. Yeah, so it's kind of like the same thing that happened last year, right? Alabama beats Georgia, and then loses to Vandy the next week.
Yep, that was in Nashville, and then
that was in Nashville, right?
Texas has to go to Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt was coming off that, and they found a way to win. Yeah. So yeah, it's gonna. And Sark joked about, hey, we're playing our first SEC game, and LSU's 3-0 in the conference.
Right. Yeah.
So they've obviously got that November non-conference win to look forward to as well.
Yeah.
But I think this is what we expected. I would argue that maybe one of the under the radar performances I mentioned earlier was Ohio State, just because they took care of Texas, but then okay, what do they have? Well, Julian Sainz playing at a pretty high level, and they went out and roughed up Washington, especially that Ohio State defense is legit.
Yeah, no, they're playing some pretty good ball. They sit at the top of the rankings. They've been number 1 since they beat Texas, and that's where they've stayed. Oregon, like you said, number 2. They got a big matchup with Indiana on the 11th. Miami at 3. Ole Miss at 4 now. Oklahoma at 5, but they don't have John Mateer for a while. He had to have surgery on his hand, which really, for me, kind of rains on my Red River rivalry parade, because you want to see the best players play, right? Like you want both teams to have the best lineup possible, and if John Mateer can't play for the Sooners, then I don't know. That kind of I don't know.
Well, they say
makes me want to go eat more corny dogs outside the Cotton Bowl rather than go in and watch the game.
Don't give it to Texas quite yet. They say they have the luxury of a Michael Hawkins who started that game last year, kind of like last year Texas felt pretty good about having Arch Manning as the backup in this day and age of if I'm not playing, I'm leaving. So, and that Oklahoma defense is so improved.
They're very good.
And
yes,
that's going to be a problem for every team.
Yeah.
Now, if the offense doesn't hold up their end of the bargain, then there's more stress on the defense.
Right.
But we'll see. I could see the reports flowing out of Norman next week that maybe Mateer can go, and all of a sudden he's in uniform and going through warm-ups. I think I've seen that before. I think Gabriel did that, as a matter of fact.
And then, wow, he's recovering faster than we thought.
Then he couldn't go.
Golly gee.
We'll see. He had surgery on his right hand, his throwing hand, so that would be a pretty quick comeback. I'm not ruling anything out.
You're right, exactly, and you can at this point. Texas A&M, nice win over Auburn. They're at number 6. They moved up 3 spots. Penn State lost to Oregon in overtime. That was a great game. That was on our air, by the way, in KXAN. That was a nice ball game. Penn State's there at 7, Indiana at 8, Texas at 9, and then Alabama's at 10. With Texas Tech moving up 1 spot to number 11, so that's nice. Nice for the old Red Raiders there.
Don't sleep on them because I'm not sure who's good in the Big 12.
Sure.
Besides them, and Arizona State. I mean, they are living a charmed life.
Boy, they are.
They keep finding ways to win. But somebody's coming out of that conference, and somebody's going to the college football playoff.
I mean, at this point, you could probably maybe pencil in Iowa State or BYU. Those are the only Big 12 teams in the rankings right now.
Well, other than Tech.
Right, other than Tech, exactly.
Yeah. And so I haven't looked at the schedule closely, but obviously imbalanced schedules. So, and I think Tech, I'm not sure who they avoid, but they're looking pretty good, and they've been able to absorb the loss of Quentin Joyner, the Manor running back, thanks in large part to the Crockett running back Cameron Dickey.
He's come on for him. Yeah, he's showed up for him. It's nice to see these local guys that we put on the KBVO Game of the Week every once in a while. It's nice to see those local guys get their shots, and Cameron Dickey's certainly making the most out of it.
Will Hammond, the quarterback from Hutto, coming in for an injured Baron Morton. We don't know his status as well, so that's another team to keep an eye on. But here we go. And also the weather could be an issue Saturday.
Yeah, it could be.
Swamp could be swampy.
The swamp may swamp.
Yeah, it could be rainy, and I know that air gets heavy down in Florida. Even though we're getting a little closer to the more mild months, it's still winter or summery feeling and humidity. This will be one of those weeks, Billy, where Texas will be practicing, maybe trying to get in more uncomfortable positions than even they're used to here because of what they're going to go into Saturday.
Well, and being uncomfortable is what the SEC is all about, right?
No doubt.
Don't
forget Mississippi State. Longhorns that's a pretty good team as well.
I mean, if Blake Shapen stays healthy for them, they are very, very good.
Yeah, that was an entertaining game against Tennessee.
It's a gauntlet out there in the SEC. No matter who you're playing, every single Saturday, or in the case of Texas A&M in Texas on a Friday, every single game, it's a knockdown drag out, and that's what people have been telling us all along, and that's the same thing that Sarkisian says to us every week at a press conference. He's like, there are no gimmies. There's no 2-foot putts in the SEC. So
no, if you're Texas, do you take 3-1 in this 4-game stretch?
I think you do because that puts you with 2 losses, but one of those losses is to the number 1 team in the country. So I think you can give up 1. I think you can.
I would say any Texas fan would say okay
no.
if that loss isn't in the Cotton Bowl.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That would be the one you really want to get just for the fan base's sake. Alrighty. Well, thanks so much for watching the Horns Report. We're gonna leave this one here. So for Roger Wallace, I'm Billy Gates, and we'll talk to you again very soon.